Hello, Tammy, you're welcome. Hello, Lydie, welcome.
Hello, glad to be here.
Good evening, everyone. We are happy to have you all here this evening. I think we will go ahead and start. So before we go ahead, I will just use this opportunity and kind of give you a brief highlight of what the Conflict Lab is and equally what this particular fellowship has been all through. So the Conflict Lab is a youth-led initiative that was founded in 2021, and its primary objective. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Godwill. Go ahead, please.
So the Conflict Lab, like I said earlier, was founded in 2021, and it's a youth-led initiative which seeks to build the capacity of young people to actually take the lead in defining the peace, security, and governance landscape of Africa. And this is done through research, policy advocacy, and grassroots mobilization and initiatives. So we at the Conflict Lab, we do as much as possible to adopt a more grassroots approach and resilient-based approach, whereby we try to take over our conversations, go past the vulnerability picture that Africa has. We try to look at existing coping capacities and how this can be explored as key windows of opportunities and resilient. And all this we're trying to do, having young people take the lead in making sure that this is possible. And by doing so, we're trying to change the narratives that young people are the destructive forces as far as this peace, security, and governance context of Africa is concerned. For this particular fellowship, we did realize that the only way to make young people have a very constructive voice as far as defining policy is concerned is to have these policy voices grounded in evidence-based research. So for the past 2 months, what we've been doing here is we've been trying to build the capacity of young people who we selected from across the continent on models such as research methodology, fact-checking, and how to develop a policy paper. So this evening, what we'll be doing here, we'll try to kind of paint a picture of how the journey has been, the impact it has been, and we'll be doing so by having these young leaders present their different findings, which they've been able to do over the course of the past 2 months. So before we start, we would want to acknowledge the presence of Tammy. Tammy, we are very, very happy to have you here. Unfortunately, the other speakers we invited had a scheduled clash, and we are very, very excited that it was possible for you to make it to this session today. Alongside Tammy, we have some other key speakers we actually invited. They have been part of our programs before, and we are very happy to have them as part of this program too. I think one of them is Lydie. I don't know if she's dropped as a result of network also. And Noah, we are equally happy to have you, and we are looking forward to having your vital contributions in today's program. At this point, I would hand it over to Elena. Elena served as a research assistant at the Conflict Lab. She would take the role of the moderator of this program today and lead us from there. Elena, please, can you kindly introduce yourself and take it all from here? Thank you all very much for coming.
Good evening, everybody. So thank you, Godwill. I will very shortly introduce myself. I have served, as Godwill has said, as a research assistant for Conflict Lab until November. Now I had to go back to my university duties, let's say, as I'm completing my master's degree. But I have also participated and presented one session of one module actually of the fellowship program. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really grateful that for the invite, so I can participate to the end of this very interesting and complex project that Conflict Lab has carried out this year. So I think I will directly go into kind of introducing a little bit our keynote speaker today, which is Tammy Palacios, as Godwill has already kind of anticipated, hinted at. And she is the program manager and founder of the Priority Sustainable Counterterrorism portfolio and model at the New Lines Institute for Strategy and Policy, located in Washington, D.C., and also in the 2023-2024 fellow with the Modern War Institute at West Point. So in order to introduce a little bit Priority Sustainable Counterterrorism, we just want to give you a sort of like idea of what they do there. And basically, the Priority Sustainable Counterterrorism hinges on prevention, is largely non-kinetic, and is implemented through a combination of bottom-up and top-down approaches across sectors, actors, and levels. And so already from here, you can tell that there is a sort of like kind of sharing of objectives, let's say, and perspectives with Conflict Lab. The portfolio, of course, engages local actors, practitioners, and policymakers on locally informed and data-supported priority actions that support long-term sustainable solutions to insecurity, especially, of course, terrorism and areas periphery to terrorist hot zones. So this is Priority Sustainable Counterterrorism, but our keynote speaker tonight, and we are very happy and grateful and honored that she is here and accepted our invite, has presented at the Wilson Center, United States Military Academy, and was also interviewed for the African Exploitable Conditions Model Network, as well as also by other TV and newspapers outlets, for example, Olga TV, AFP News, Africa Defense Forum, Q News, Al-Qaeda News, and as we also anticipated before, has also published through New Lines, the National Interest, Jamestown Foundation Terrorism Monitor, and Modern War Institute. So as you can kind of see from her outstanding curriculum, let's say, we are very lucky to have her tonight. And in terms of her education, she holds a master's degree in security and terrorism studies and graduate certificate in terrorism analysis from the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, and at the University of Maryland, and a bachelor's degree in international studies and politics and government from the University of Hartford. So after like this brief but very dense, let's say, presentation of our keynote speaker, I would kindly give the floor to her, and after her speech, we're gonna have like a Q&A session. So if you have questions, feel free to leave them in the chat, or just unmute yourself after the speaker's speech and directly ask her. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you so much for a very complete introduction. I appreciate, and I'm very honored to be here. This is the kind of engagement that I think is most important. I would put this above the priority of speaking to policymakers, because everyone on this call who will be in the space, I think that is that is the impetus for change, is collective action. And so I'm honored to be here, and I'm very grateful for the invitation. I did put together a tiny PowerPoint slide. I'm not sure if it's possible to share. Would that be okay?
Yes, I think so. As the moderator, I don't think there are any issues. On a technical level, I think you should have all the kind of authorizations, let's say, as as you have joined, let's say, the meeting, to be able to share your screen. So let me know if it works. Otherwise, I'm gonna go back to the kind of technical team that we have here and ask them.
I think I might need that authorization because I don't see the option right now.
Okay,
I can
so
also send in an email quickly, and if that's easier.
yeah, so now I'm going to ask Godwill
Oh, I see
actually.
it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, perfect.
amazing.
Glorious. All right. All right. So I'm just going to go into it. I very much would love to engage in discussion and Q&A. So please, by all means, if you have questions over the course, feel free to raise your hand using the raise hand function. I'm happy to address if it pertains to a certain slide. If it's a little more generic of a question, or it can be held to the end. Also very much looking forward to engaging in the end. So I am going to play and see if this will hop up. Do you see the first slide for the presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful. So like I said, so glad to be here, and thank you so much. I put a little bit of a case study on some of the work that we've been doing, and then I have a couple of slides at the end that are meant to be directed to the closing fellowship, or whoever else is on this call, in terms of key insights or approaches, ways of thinking and doing this work that might be helpful more broadly for people as they enter research, practitioner, and engage with policymakers in the general peace and security, but also development, civil society, or all these kind of interconnected spaces. First line is on New Line's vision, mission, and values. So I work at New Lines Institute, which is a think tank in Washington, D.C. The New Lines Institute envisions a world that fulfills its potential, in which people and nations can thrive. We're inspired by a holistic view of the world. We recognize human interconnectedness, and the overall aim of all of our engagements, whether that be a publication or a policy briefing, research, some super in the weeds data report, or if it's a more strategic assessment, we're always considering how we can do our work in terms of how we can do research, how we can write, and how we can engage policymakers, and how we're even considering framing or coming up with recommendations. We always consider this kind of human agency, and try to, especially with the work that I do, but also many others at the Institute, where we can be part of the solution, right? So even in how we do our publications, how we write, how we engage, how can we center human agency and say things in a way that supports those goals. And I think that's something that's really unique, and we have constant iterative meetings at the institute level on how we're applying our vision, mission, and principles, and that's something that's quite unique. There's most organizations, whether you're an NGO or a think tank or a large conglomerate, have a vision, mission, and values, but I think taking a look at what that purpose is and how you're living and working by it is also really good practice. Overall, our mission is to provoke principled and transformative leadership based on peace, security, global communities, character, stewardship, and development. And a lot of our work is directed towards policy makers, but you'll see that the work that the Priority Sustainable portfolio does extends from the uppermost levels of policymakers to also engage practitioners, local actors, and we really do see ourselves as bridging the gap between what are usually separate sectors and rooms. Our work is guided by 5 core principles: peace, development, community and citizenship, character, and stewardship. And I think one of the values that I appreciate the most is this stewardship, and kind of what I was saying in considering how we do our projects, how we pursue our work as stewards ourselves, is right. How can I represent and be part of the positive change that I'm recommending others do? It's very easy to look at a problem set, identify the pain points in that problem set, and maybe come up with some solutions. But it's a lot harder, and I think it takes a little more strength to not just point outwards, but consider, and whether that's you as a person or the space that you kind of identify yourself with, where that space can connect and meet that sector that you hope would act differently in a way that might push change forward. Because there is a reason, and I'll touch on this in some of the latter slides, there is a reason why things haven't happened a certain way so far. And so to research, analyze, to engage, to be a practitioner or decision maker in a way that encourages change requires a respect of the landscape as it is now, right? The world is a complex space, and as those that have completed this fellowship can probably respect and the work that you've done and the experiences and the knowledge that you've built. Things are complex, but they're also simple, right? So every single complex conflict situation, or even just an issue of mediation between 2 individuals or 2 organizations or 2 countries, there's a complexity, but there's also, in order to move forward, there has to be a respect and understanding of what it is now, right? Not just and what we hope to see, but what are the parameters that we're dealing with, right? As a landscape, as an issue, and as actors. So the portfolio that I lead, as our gracious moderator teed up for me, is Priority Sustainable Counterterrorism. The portfolio itself is named for my target audience. So the intention of all of the work that I do is for a more security and traditional minded policymaker that does not believe in prevention or does not see the benefit perhaps in the intersection of development and security. So the work that I do is actually prevention. How I do research, how I approach analysis, how I engage practitioners, policymakers, and local actors, it is prevention in intention and in definition. But I named the portfolio with counterterrorism because in order for me to bring the people into the room that perhaps only look at solutions to conflict as kinetic, I had to speak to them in their language. So even the name of the portfolio is very much intentional, and that I, from the beginning, frame things and consider terminology and word choice that is friendly for the person that I'm trying to bring to center, if you will, or to change their mind. Because that's what we're doing. If you're engaging in research, analysis, if you're engaging at a think tank or with decision makers, whether that be on the ground in the most local and grassroots of contexts, or if that be at the national level, or even at the international level with the United Nations, perhaps, or African Union, or international NGOs, larger organizations, it all stems from that same point. So the portfolio that I engage policymakers, practitioners, academics, experts, and from all of these levels. So I have to consider for each project and each briefing who it is that I'm engaging with, what their role is in the larger scheme of things. So if I'm talking about counterterrorism, I'll consider what it is that actor does, right, in the broader scope of things. And so I'm also considering how I can share my research analysis and expertise in a way that is relevant to the actor that I'm speaking to. And I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that later on. The model that I work on is priority is the first word for a reason. All the recommendations consider what can be done today, but what can be done today that also connects and supports long-term sustainable outcomes. There are 3 projects that I have within, and I just want to let you know that I cannot see, I realize I asked for a raising of hands, but I actually cannot see that. So if someone does have a question or interjection, maybe the moderator could help with that, or just feel free to unmute yourself. But okay, back to the slide. There are 3 projects within the portfolio, kind of talking again about how we present and frame work to be relevant to the target audience that I'm trying to reach, but also in consideration of the landscape of institutions and policymakers as they exist. So, and this will change on country to country basis. This will change region to region. This will change if you're at the international level to the local level. For US policymakers, they're kind of separated in the US government by development and then security. So we have State Department and USAID, the Agency for International Development, that would work on anything that's more development related or in that sector. And then we have our Department of Defense, and we have different offices that engage on security issues. So I've crafted my projects and my reports and the data that I work on to be as those sectors are divvied up and how they look in the policy landscape. So the 3 projects are localization policy, integrating security and development, and positive prevention. These each play a role in prioritizing sustainable approaches to counterterrorism, aka prevention, and that being what is happening on the most grassroots and local levels in a conflict affected context. So the towns, the villages, the counties, what local organizations, civil society organizations, maybe chiefs or more tribal authorities, what is the work that they're doing? And that can be youth or women, capacity building related, peace building related. It could be delivering of services. It can really cover any number of subtopics, if you will. And then integrating security and development project is security analysis. And that's done to respect the differences in the space. It's not always appropriate to bring the topic of security analysis or terrorism into a development conversation. So I engage those separately to respect those differences. But overall, the model is geospatial and it's prioritized to progress. So you'll see in the case study report that I'm going to share in just the next slide that all of the projects and reports that I publish are evidence supported or data informed, because everyone is a busy policymaker. And so if you don't give them a reason to listen to you, they simply won't, or you won't get the listening ear that you're hoping for. So in all of the reports that we publish and all of the policy engagements that we do, I leverage data as much as I can. That can be mapping, that can be iterative, it can be insights or experiences, but it's always considering how can I support my argument, right? Because that's what any research analysis is, an argument. So how can I help people trust in what I'm saying? So how can I give them information that will either demonstrate the knowledge or the problem set, but people listen and they change their mind for a number of reasons. It can be accolades, it can be a display of good intention, or because someone told you, right, that this person is a respected expert in a field. But the most foolproof way to demonstrate expertise, or that your insights have value, they have value regardless, but data is really a helpful tool and approach to demonstrate that. So we're going to dig into some of these slides here. Does anyone have any questions on any of what I've said about the portfolio or the projects? I think we're good.
So for now, I didn't see any questions on the chat. So if nobody has further questions that they want to actually kind of ask directly, I think that we're good to go on. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to just have a couple of slides on this report that I'm picking as an example report. And then I have some slides on insights and format. But this is on preventing another Al-Qaeda affiliated quasi-state. So it's having to do with JNM, the Al-Qaeda affiliate in the Sahel, which I'm sure many of you, having worked with Conflict Lab and have done this fellowship, are familiar of many of these main bad actors, right, or conflict scenarios. So I have no intention of speaking to a informed crowd as if you don't know everything. So I'm going to kind of dig into it, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Essentially, this report identified what was missing. So there's obviously, it's a complex conflict that considers history, it considers politics. There is a story of how policies and programs and counterterrorism has been implemented. Who are the actors? How did they do it? Right, for 10 plus years. So there's a lot to consider. What this report did was identify just one of a number of gaps. So there are other ways to approach the same problem set. There's always a number of ways you can approach a conflict problem set. So this is just one gap that identified that the research space, we were not actually publishing data that was always helpful to effective counterterrorism and prevention implementation. So what I mean is, generally speaking, we have places like the Institute for the Study of War, you have ACLED, you have reports put out by WANEP perhaps, or African Union just put a report out, I believe, a couple of days ago. Their research entity, there's the UNDP Pathways to Extremism report that was in 2018 and then also in 2023. So there is literature out there, right? And you have people that have done on the ground research. You have a lot of great stuff, but generally speaking, it's on kinetic activity. So the terrorism and the conflict research space is generally going to publish things that have to do with a bad actor's motivations. They might do things like, do leadership profiles. They might track finance, or you have GOTC, who does some really great in-depth work on, for example, illicit economies and transportation of equipment and things like that. But there's a big gap in analyzing non-kinetic operations and movement of a bad actor like a terrorist group. It's something that might be on a researcher's screen, right? It might be part of the research that they do to do the publication that they end up publishing, but it's not a leading thing that ends up getting published. That's not the mapping that we see. We see the map that shows this is where ISGS and JNM control territory. We see graphics on this is a number of deaths by each of these groups, right, in terms of how many people they've killed. We see mapping on graphics like this is the organizational chart, but it's all about the terrorist group. And so, but if we're looking at what is effective prevention and counterterrorism, that's only half of the equation. The other half of the equation is who are you protecting when you're preventing or countering terrorism? Sure, the viability of the state, but you're protecting civilians. So shouldn't we understand and do research on and analyze and try to implement policies and programs to address a conflict issue that consider that relationship and that reality? And that is at the most local of levels. What is a town or village's relationship with the bad actor that's on their doorstep, and vice versa? So bringing kind of civilians to center of analysis is essentially the call that I have for the research space writ large. But how do we do that in a data-informed way? How do we produce mapping and graphics and all of these things that we see, right? The mapping, that kinetic activity. How do we map and bring evidence and data to something like non-kinetic analysis? It's kind of a wild concept. So I have a couple of graphics on the next slide.
Sorry, Tammy, can I ask you one thing? Because I saw a question on the chat.
Sure.
So Juliet asks whether in your experience, like what is the most critical gap between research and its translation into actionable policy?
Could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, so Juliet asks, in your experience, what is the most critical gap between research and its translation into actionable policy?
I think Juliet has identified the answer almost in her question. That is the gap, right? It's not just something that we see as, oh, that must be a disparate, right? There must be disconnect between research, policy, and action. There is a huge gap just in the connection of those three spaces. So you may be researchers, experts, academics, right? In this one sector, you have practitioners, and that can include implementers, even INGOs or local civil society organizations, youth-based organizations, women-led organizations, all of these, right? As another whole bucket. And then you have decision makers, policymakers that are typically separate, and you have connection points, but it's driven by passion, not by framework necessarily. So in international organization, right, might partner with a local organization, localization being the new trendy term, if you will, in DC, but also I think for many INGOs and donors around the world. But not all policymakers have to, there's not an obvious pipeline. They don't have to connect with researchers, practitioners in like a common way. So they might be informed by, but it's disparate. You have think tanks and advocacy organizations that it's their purpose to inform policymakers, but there are policies that are crafted without kind of that informed understanding. And then, as we all know, there are plenty of policies that don't even get implemented. So I think the gap is just that these are separate sectors, and the need is for advocacy organizations or advocates to not be the only people that kind of take a personal responsibility to hold implementation accountable. There are some really great organizations that will obviously publish when things, right, don't happen. Hey, this act was passed into law, but it hasn't been used. But that should really be a responsibility of everyone, and it should be baked into how policymakers and decision makers have to do their work. Happy to answer more of that. I hope that addressed some of it.
Okay, yes. So I am looking at the chat right now. We have like a couple more questions, but since they are kind of big ones, I don't know if you want to address them now, or maybe you want to go on to like the other graphs that you wanted to show us, and then maybe we can address them later, as you prefer.
Yeah. I'll do a couple of the graphs and then we can engage the questions.
Okay, amazing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So this is I've really just copied and pasted this from the report. But you'll see kind of in this introductory paragraph how we're leveraging this data and analysis of the non-kinetic. So JNM, Al-Qaeda affiliate, is on track to gain firm control over swaths of territory in the Central Sahel. Obviously, we know that they already have control over swaths of territory, but firm control in terms of staying power. We know that there are some horrible things that this group does, but the point that I make in the report is analysis and data collection on a more pragmatic approach that they've taken with civilians. So this is not to mean that they are a non-lethal group. They are very much a terrorist group, and it's a complex, right, umbrella organization, and you have complex dynamics in terms of engaging with volunteer fighter forces, and that's a whole other topic in the space of terrorism and conflict studies. In what makes or what differentiates a civilian to a fighter, which it doesn't even matter, right? Because there are plenty of civilians that are attacked, and these groups are not operating in ways that are completely non or low lethal, right? And they have not limited their engagements to just counterinsurgency engagements, for example, against security forces. There are instances of them doing horrible things, which I'm happy to speak to, but I don't want to speak to it if it's not asked for. So essentially, okay, what does this problem set have to do with the policymaker that I'm trying to speak to? So there would be different policy recommendations if I was trying to speak to a policymaker in Benin or in Ghana or in Germany or for United States, and then what office or department, what sector that policymaker that I'm trying to reach is in. So the recommendations in this report were crafted for a security forward policymaker in U.S. government, but certainly the analysis is relevant for others. Essentially, the main couple of key takeaways was that through I swam through about 10,000 separate security events through ACLED, as well as in consideration of literature review and local insights, including some on-the-ground reports and dissertations that have been published previously on JNM's engagement in Burkina Faso and Mali, circa 2018 and 2019. But the top line is that in addition to the kinetic activity that this terrorist group does, they also have a non-traditional, non-kinetic, not just modus operandi, a way of doing things, but they have operationalized a kind of non-kinetic strategy found in abduct release, which, as we all know, kidnapping events and abductions or kidnappings as a strategy is common. Boko Haram is notorious for this, but also just local criminal entities and bandits or profit-seeking individuals or small groups. But JNM has taken this strategy and kind of incorporated it into their territorial expansion. So their efforts to control the next towns that they're going to engage with / try to take control over, they will do things like road blockades or these non-kinetic or threatening, right? So it's threat of violence, but it's not actual killing all the times in the beginning, to squeeze that next population in a non-kinetic way. And there's also that abduct release that is terrorizing key personnel or giving direction, right, or gaining information, which is more of an operational strategy than it is just profit seeking, right, or recruitment or any of the other list of reasons why abductions, kidnapping events are used by bad actors. The graphics here are mapping of examples of mapping non-kinetic analysis. There's a multitude of options of how this could be done for other researchers and people in the space, but this is essentially my call, is that the research space and policymakers need to see more of this. We need to be better at analyzing the gray zone activity, or the things that aren't just things that go boom. We're really good at identifying that in a conflict scenario, but there needs to be more mapping, graphics. We need to leverage data more in some of that, in the geographic area that prevention would be done for, right? And we need to find a way to map and leverage data for non-kinetic solutions. And that's something that the space is hopefully in the direction of doing more. So these are those graphics.
So we have the questions now, if you want
Great.
to go through them. One, it's kind of a big one. So I don't know, maybe we could start from like the last two ones that have just come in, which are a little bit like related to what you were saying just now. So Sadirame actually asks how counterterrorism policies address interconnected issues like poverty, political instability, and social inequality that often fuel extremism in a kind of like vicious cycle. And so since we were talking about trying, to leverage data more to try to get to the local level, to the kind of local population's priorities a little bit more. How do you think that these counterterrorism policies address these interconnected issues, or in general, how they should address maybe these interconnected issues?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So how do so the short answer is they don't nearly as much as they could or should. And that is the problem. The problem is that we're in a day and age where, for the US side, it's because of a couple decades of engaging in Iraq, Afghanistan. But this change in terminology and policy prioritization has shifted in different spaces around the world. And also, I think just right at the top, we should identify, right, that people translate terrorism and terrorist actors differently, to avoid those pitfalls, if you will. I stick with Al-Qaeda and ISIS affiliated groups, so that I don't lose a policymaker, practitioner, anyone, and experts listening ear to those. I call them trenches. Every time you're engaging a policy, singular, right? Like a counterterrorism policy, or a counterterrorism policy maker, or a development policy maker, right? So either the policy, the act, the law itself, or the person that is crafting it, or the person implementing it. There are certain trenches that exist in terms of there are disagreement points, there are conversation points, which are all certainly valid. But if you hit one of those, it's almost like a video game. Like the conversation's over, the listening ear has closed. So the problem is that counterterrorism policies currently do not properly connect with development policies, and that's across the board. There is a disconnect between civilian government and military security apparatus of most national governments around the world. There are some examples of, for example, Scandinavian countries have done a better job of connecting security and development policies. There are some more local examples of where perhaps in Nigeria, right, you look at the DDR programming for Boko Haram and how that was kind of incorporated with some security apparatus, but it also doesn't connect with the development policies, right? So, and that's what you're looking at is the thing that has to be talked about, has to be professionalized, is this taboo intersection of security and development. Because right now you'll have a policy or a strategy that is a security policy or strategy. And that'll, be either the police, the National Guard, the Army, the Special Forces, whoever security is in that landscape. But that actor, that Army, that police, whatever connected strategy, isn't connected or doesn't get coordinated with the policies that address poverty, political instability, social inequality. And so that's the main problem, is that disconnect. So that's kind of one of the hopes, is that in encouraging mapping and data informed work on the non-kinetic, that is one example of a way that the development and security fields can be better connected to each other.
Thank you very much, Tammy. So another question that we have, which is also interesting and kind of related to the idea of trying to engage with the local populations more. It's about their engagement, like direct engagement in prevention measures for terrorism. So Anna asks if there are specific technologies or tools that can monitor and understand the impact, for example, of women, but also like both in leadership positions or the community level as influencers, recruiters, or preventers, let's say. So are there kind of specific like research tools that can be used to try to also map their direct contribution? And in general, are there frameworks that kind of include these roles, these local roles, women's especially, in these prevention activities?
Yes. So the model that I use, there's also, for example, Institute for Economics and Peace has positive peace framework that has different kind of sections, if you will, of the community and the landscape that need to be viable or vibrant for the existence of positive peace, right? So not just the lack of conflict or the staving or the mitigating against that conflict, but also is kind of a framework that focuses on the positive existence of the things that are necessary in a community to have positive peace. There are other toolkits and frameworks that you'll find United Nations or other kind of international organizations have published, or even international NGOs or places like the Alliance for Peace Building, which is a DC located coalition of hundreds of organizations that work internationally, that will publish, they call them toolkits more often. So if you were to do a Google and try to identify some of these to read yourself in, I would probably use the word toolkit or framework, but they're going to be more often in the peace builder or humanitarian sectors. And there's a need, and I encourage anyone who's interested in helping, there is a need for what is that toolkit or framework, right, for prevention. There's things like a health-based approach, right? There's you can look at the intersection of sociology and psychology and all of these things that have existed in the prevention and countering violent extremism and terrorism spaces, but the peace builder and humanitarian sectors are a lot better at those toolkits that are really getting to implementation, right? Not just counterinsurgency, not just the security, but real prevention is to do with a kinetic actor, but it itself is not a kinetic action. So yeah, good question, and happy to add more offline if helpful.
Amazing. So now, unfortunately, at around 6, we have to switch to the fellows' presentations of their policy briefs. So we don't really have a lot of time. There's just a question that I didn't get to kind of present to you from our fellows. It's kind of a general one. So I don't know if you feel like having like a sort of very brief kind of 2 minutes answer for that. And it's about how have you like how you managed to navigate the intersection of cultural practices and global human rights policies in your policy advocacy.
So I host, as part of the localization policy project, short-term working groups. So if you are from, for example, if you're an NGO or a grassroots organization, you have the benefit of knowing what that local context is. As someone in DC, I would not even start to pretend like I do. So I gain insight from connecting and holding space for those connections. So I use a format of a short-term working group for 2 reasons. A, we're an output-driven entity. We're a think tank, right? So we publish, we engage, but I'm not an implementer myself. So, and then also for the reason of having respect for and efficient process. So we'll host 3 to 4 meetings total. This has been, for example, I see a comment on the Kenya National Action Plans. We just held the first meeting for a working group of 20 Kenyan youth-led and civil society organizations across Kenya this morning. Well, morning in DC, afternoon there. And it's I don't bring any assumptions to that. We do our lit review and we do market research on hundreds of organizations, but the key points, the insights, and the recommendations come from those in the context. That's something that I wish international NGOs and international entities did more often, and they don't do nearly enough. You have people that work in the space for 20 years and they think that at the international level, and they think they understand context, but local context is ever changing, and so are the issue sets and the complexities of them. So if working on a local issue, it should be done in consideration of the insights from that area.
So, Tammy, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I saw another question coming, but we have to kind of go to the fellows' presentations now. But since you have been really kind to offer your time both here online, but also offline, if maybe some fellows have other questions, do you want to leave us with a contact of yours that they can kind of use, or just LinkedIn, for example, and you can leave it in the chat. So maybe if there were people that didn't that were able to actually reach out to you right now, maybe they can do it like later on. So thank you very much for your time, your more than valuable insights, I have to say. And thank you very much again.
Yeah, thank you. I will. I'll put my LinkedIn in the chat and my email. But yeah, happy to engage with anyone offline. This is the last slide that I'm happy to. I can share just the link in the chat if anyone wants to see it. But key insights from the work is that we have to meet the policymakers, the practitioners, and the experts halfway. So as I said, there's a reason why things are as they are. And being a positive change maker kind of holds that responsibility of how can I talk and how can I do things to connect someone as they understand a problem. And I'll leave you with that.
Thank you very much again, Tammy. Really, it was amazing. I saw also a lot of appreciative comments on the chat. So thank you very much again. It was really an honor and a pleasure to have you with us tonight. And if I'm not mistaken, I remember you also from another event that Conflict Lab held, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you very much again for your continued support. It's really appreciated. And now I think that we can switch to the fellows presentations. So as you know, now we will have like a set of 10 minutes presentations. I can now give the floor to the first one, which should be held by Hannah, if I'm not mistaken. So strengthening the role of women in post-conflict reconstruction, a case study of Ethiopia. So Hannah, whenever you're ready, please feel free to unlock your mic and share your policy brief and insights with us. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I am very ready. Can I share the screen, by the way?
Yeah, so I think that now Conflict Lab maybe is presenting.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah,
That's
whenever you need to change the slide, just tell them and they're gonna do that. Thank you.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. So as it's already mentioned, my name is Hannah. I'm from Ethiopia, and my research is focused on strengthening women's participation in post-conflict reconstruction in Ethiopia. And yeah, in the presentation, I will walk you through the purpose, key findings, lesson learned, and proposed integrated policy framework of the research. The next slide, please. Yeah, the purpose of this paper, it was like to examine the current, women's current participation in the post-conflict reconstruction of the country, as Ethiopia Ethiopia have a long story of ethnic conflict, civil wars, and extra. So it was very important for me to examine the participation of the women in this case, and analyzing barriers and opportunities was the other purpose of the paper. And this includes identifying cultural, social, and economic factors that limit their involvement, as well showing opportunities to empower them. And lastly, it was also to have or to recommend policy-based recommendations, to make policy-based recommendations. That was the purpose. So in general, the goal was to ensure women are not only seen as victims, but also as key contributors to peace building and reconstruction efforts of the country. And the third slide. Yeah, so based on this, the key findings, I try to segregate the findings. So through the process of this research, mainly, the first thing that I want to speak about this is based on, on the gender dynamics in post-conflict reconstruction in Ethiopia. Women are often the primary victims of the conflict in all of the conflicts and the civil wars in the country. For example, in the conflict that was recently happened in the country just 2 years ago, it was a conflict between the regional government, one of the regional governments, and the federal government, and it costed us so many lives. And for example, from the reported conflict related sexual violences, it was, I can say that based on the evidence, I can say that it was mostly majority of the victims were women. So in this finding, it was observed that the primary victims are women in the conflict situation in the country. But despite this, women play a significant role in informal peace building process, such as community mediation and rebuilding families and extra. For example, in some parts of the country, there are a group of women, like it's a traditional group of women who mainly work on mediation, conflict management, and like this, they are known as Hadasinkes, or I cannot exactly translate it in English. And this group of women are well known for their mediation skills and conflict management skills. But however, these women remain underrepresented in the formal peace process, such as community mediation and rebuilding families. Can I have the next slide? Yeah, as you can see on the pictures that I try to show in here, almost in the formal peace process, in the peace building decision making process, women are not included in general, or if they are also included, they are not even in the main decision making roles. This was the main finding of the research. The other finding was the barriers of women participation. So as I've said, women are not included, they are not participated, they are not engaged in the formal peace building, even though they have the knowledge, even though they have the experience, they are completely excluded from the process. So what were the challenges or the barriers that were affecting women, impacting women to participate in the process? So the main, as it's in the other African countries, the main problem or the main challenge was patriarchal and cultural norms that continue to limit women's roles in leadership, decision making. For example, women are often expected to focus on caregiving and household responsibilities instead of public participation. The other challenge was education and capacity. Education and capacity. So in the country, according to UNICEF report by UNICEF, family literacy and school attendance rates remained lower than their male counterparts, particularly in Ethiopia, in the rural part of the country. Of course, I've said that they have the experience and the knowledge, but the problem was this grassroots level knowledge was not integrated to the modern education, and it was not included. The other problem was the economic exclusion. I mean, they are poor economically, and that was the main challenge that hinders them to participate in the peace building process. So women are economically marginalized due to unequal access to resources like land, credit, employment in the country. For example, women farmers in Ethiopia, lack of access to agricultural tools, training, and all those situations and challenges are kept to hinder their participation in the peace building process. So when it comes to, during the process to this journey of researching, I also saw that the gaps of the current policies as a finding, as I wanted to present. Can you please the next slide? No, the previous, please. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. So the gaps in the current policies where like there are absence of a national peace building framework in the country in general. It's not only about women, but the country itself lacks a national peace building frameworks. So this is also one of the gap in the policies that affected the women participation in the post-conflict reconstruction. The other problem was, or the other policy gap was, that the country, it's theoretically that the country adopted or introduced the UN conflict resolution framework, the 1325. They introduced in the country, but it's observed that it's not the country didn't adopt or made a national action plan based on these policy frameworks. The other policy gap was insufficient economic empowerment policies. The country have policies that are made to empower women economically, but these policies have limited opportunities for women. On the other finding, as I already mentioned the barriers and the challenges that hinder women to participate in the peace building process, but I also observed that there are opportunities for women to be included in the peace building. Despite the challenge, the research highlighted promising opportunities. The first opportunity that I observed was the existing quota system in the country. The country have this system of quota through, before just 30 years ago, but the country started to implement this quota system just before 4 years ago. Due to the newly elected prime minister, the country started to really implement this quota system, which introduced 40% of seats in the parliament. And so this existing quota system, if the country was able to implement it, and if there was other mechanisms like monitoring and evaluation mechanisms, if there was a cross-checking methods to check if the system was really in use or functioning, that would be very nice. And I found the existing quota system as a good opportunity for women to be included in the peace building and post-conflict reconstruction process. The other opportunity was the knowledge that I tried to mention, the grassroots or local knowledge, that women are really strong enough, capable enough to mediate grassroots level, local level. And so their knowledge is really, I found this as a good opportunity if it's integrated with the modern education and if it's used to build their capacity. And of course, the growing recognition of women's role globally and locally this is also one of the opportunity that I observed. So these are the key findings of the research. And when it comes to the lesson learned during the policy paper development, so the first one is identifying key gaps is the most important one. I realized that while policies may exist, implementation is often lacking. For example, many global frameworks, like as I tried to mention before, the UNHCR, UN Women, Peace and Security Agenda, are not fully applied in Ethiopia. I also wanted to mention that while identifying identifying K gaps as a lesson learned, I have to be honest that while I was writing this paper, I was after just writing the introduction and blah 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 blah, I was already jumped to really propose the policies that are in mind based on the information that I gathered. But with with my supervisor, I was advised and suggested that it would be very nice for me and for the policy gaps also to really see the policy gaps first before proposing a policy or writing a policy and before advocating for something. It's really important to identify the key gaps that are already in the policies. So this was very
Hannah,
important. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Unfortunately, I have to ask you to maybe wrap up in like a couple of minutes because then we have to go to the others. I'm so sorry for this. I know it's
Okay,
super
it's very
frustrating.
okay. I try to finalize it in 5 minutes. Yeah. So as it's already mentioned here, and as we can see it in the slide, it was it was just a process of learning. So it was a process of learning. There are a lot of things that I learned that I mentioned, understanding the importance of context, the role of data in policy recommendations, which is critical for policy development. And so the last, can you share the last slide? Can you share the last slide? Yeah. So the impact on my this process of course have an impact for my future career development. This research has had a profound impact on my skills, career, and future plans. I have developed strong skills in policy analysis, research methodology, and etc. Through this research, I have also built valuable connections with professionals, with the experts, like-minded, and I hope this will help in previous research writing and engaging in this process. So in the last, yes, this is the last slide that so the final proposed policy recommendation was these three components overlap and integrate into one comprehensive framework. For example, legal reforms and capacity building programs together can strengthen women's leadership, while economic empowerment and capacity building can create pathways for women full participation. So by integrating this approach, the framework addresses both immediate and long-term needs for women and in women inclusion in post-conflict reconstruction. So this is the recommended policy framework from the research. Yeah, that was all about my presentation. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And I didn't forget, but I was just jumped to the presentation. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation that you made before. So yeah, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for this amazing presentation. I'm sorry I had to kind of cut you off a little bit there. If there are questions, we're gonna have them at the end of the presentation set. So now I'm gonna ask Lashaine. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, which will present the intersection of mental health and social justice, addressing stigma and access to care in marginalized communities. Whenever you're ready, Lashaina.
Good evening. I'm ready. May you please share my screen?
Yeah, so I'll ask Conflict Lab if they want to share your screen, or if they prefer you to share directly the
Yes,
screen by
Okay.
yourself.
Lashan, please, if you're able to share your screen, go ahead.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
let me work on that.
So just in case, I'm just kind of asking the other fellows that have to present later on if they can get their presentations ready, since we had some issues with presenting the first through Conflict Lab sharing the screen, so that we won't have any issues later. Thank you very much for your kind understanding, and now the floor, Lashana, is yours.
Okay, thank you. So my policy paper was on the intersection between mental health and social justice. So it was addressing the inequalities that affect marginalized communities and how best policies can address stigma and improving access. So the background and the context is that mental health is a growing concern in Africa, where stigma, limited resources, and policy gaps hinder access to care. And there is less focus on mental health in general, especially in the African context. So some of the key challenges that I noted were the stigma and cultural misconceptions. There's a lot of uncomfortable feelings towards mental health. It can be described as demonic and other things. And then there's also inadequate resources and policy gaps and limited accessibility and also lack of awareness, and then socio-economic factors. So the need for action was to address stigma, improve accessibility, and strengthen mental health policies for marginalized communities because they are disproportionately affected by mental health, at least access to mental health, and also the lack of funds and resources makes them prone to poverty, which can also be a leading cause for mental health issues because it means that the environment can be very stressful and traumatic for them. So the policy paper focused on stigma reduction, resource allocation, accessibility, and workforce development, as well as community support. The next one, please. So the key research findings now. Sorry. Okay, so the key research findings were there is a lot of stigma surrounding mental health, and it's mainly extremely bad in marginalized communities, and there's limited resources and funding hinder the effectiveness of mental health services. So, for example, in Zimbabwe, one thing that I found interesting is that less than 1% of the national budget is what is allocated to mental health. But it's something that affects everyone. And in order for us to develop, we need to develop a holistic person who is also mentally healthy. So that was a very interesting finding in my research. And then accessibility to mental health care is inadequate, particularly in rural areas. For example, in Zimbabwe, another interesting statistic is that we only have 2 public institutions that are capable of dealing with mental health issues and less than 5 qualified psychiatrists in the whole country. So the ratio is uneven, and to then actually have the same access for people in marginalized communities is unachievable, because if the resources are strained for people in urban areas, we can only imagine how people in marginalized communities are affected by the lack of inadequate care. And then existing mental health policies are underfunded and often not implemented effectively. So there are policies for mental health, but they tend to be in theory So we do have a mental health policy. We can have mental health policies, but there is no funding that is going towards those policies, which then makes them pieces of paper that do not really translate to anything on the ground. And then also community-based mental health initiatives are underutilized despite their potential impact. So in this case, as I was researching, I found out that other countries such as Ethiopia and Rwanda have decentralized their mental health care to be in communities where religious leaders, community leaders are actually trained on how to handle mental health services, which can be something that's affordable and allows everyone to have inclusive and equal access to mental health care. So, lessons that I learned during the policy development. The first one was that collaboration between stakeholders is crucial for effective policy development. And that was very important as an advocate because I understood that even if my heart is in the right place, I cannot make change alone. So I may have recommendations, but if I do not talk to the people who can make those recommendations a reality, there is nothing that changes. So that was a big lesson that I learned during the development of the policy, that everyone who can make a policy work or be realistically implemented must be involved within the policy development. And then addressing stigma through education and public awareness is essential for improving mental health care access. And for me, this meant that we cannot say we want to deal with the stigma on paper. We have to go out there and tell people that mental health is normal and it can be fixed, and how can it be fixed. But if we sit in boardrooms and we do not go out there and teach the people and educate them, we can fix problems at a table but not really benefit the people we are advocating or lobbying for. And then long-term and sustainable funding is necessary to support mental health initiatives and programs. In this part of the process, I learned that we need to create different sources of funding and not necessarily be reliant on one source of funding. So that also includes consistently looking for funding. It means that if we now have a policy that is running, we constantly have to engage other stakeholders who may be critical in giving us funding. So that means more research proposals, more grant applications consistently, so that a policy does not have to suffer if per se we're relying on the government for funding and the government decides it's going to cut out that funding. We must always have contingency plans in order to ensure that the policies we're advocating for continue to be implemented. And then policies must be tailored to local needs and cultural contexts for better acceptance and success. What I learned in this part was that developing a policy needs you to be connected to the community. We cannot come up with policies and leave out the community that we want to help out. We need to understand their needs. We need to understand their fears. We need to truly understand how their community functions. That's the only way we can implement policies that they will accept, because if it's something that they do not understand or they do not approve of, that policy will automatically become a failure. So when it comes to stakeholder engagement, it's also very important to include the beneficiaries of a policy or the target group. And then regular monitoring and evaluation are vital to ensure that mental health policies are effectively implemented. I think this goes for general development projects. We need to see if an intervention is actually making a difference, because it should not be something that we say we have done and we report to donors. We also need to see if an intervention truly works and is truly changing lives. So there's need for constant monitoring and evaluation of the policies. And then for the impact on my career and future endeavors, I gained experience in policy development, which provided a foundation for future work in social change. I also strengthened my advocacy skills by adding my voice to diverse stakeholders and advocating for marginalized communities. I think this policy paper also gave me an opportunity to advocate for something that I'm passionate about. So that was a very big impact on me. And then it improved my research and analytical abilities, positioning me as a more competent and impactful development practitioner. And then it also increased my drive to work on issues of mental health and social justice, specifically within the African context. My key policy recommendations would be to increase funding for mental health services and resources, to integrate mental health care into primary healthcare settings, to enhance public awareness and education to reduce stigma, to strengthen the mental health workforce through training and support, to strengthen legal and legislative frameworks to ensure robust mental health protection and access for all. And then the implementation strategies for these recommendations would be the allocation of resources to increase funding on mental health services and training, and then policy integration by incorporating mental health into primary health care, and then public education, launching awareness campaigns to reduce stigma, workforce development, training healthcare professionals in mental health, and offering subsidies, even scholarships for those who may be interested in exploring mental health as a study. And then legislative reform by strengthening legal frameworks for mental health that will ensure that all have access to mental health care, and then engaging stakeholders by involving everybody affected by mental health, everybody who can help everyone affected by mental health, and other key players in policy development and service delivery. So in conclusion, the policy paper addressed mental health in Africa, and it understood that it requires a comprehensive approach that is rooted in social justice, and this can be done through strengthening policies, increased resources, stronger legal frameworks, while engaging key stakeholders, allowing us to foster a more inclusive and equitable mental health care system that is inclusive of all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lashani, for your presentation. As I said before, if there are questions, we can address them at the end of all the presentations. So now I would like to give the floor to Mike. And if I hope that the name is pronounced correctly. Once again, I apologize also in advance for the last two speakers, which will present strategies for fostering national unity and healing following contested elections. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes, the name has been pronounced correctly. It's Mike. So my name is Mike Kaira. So the topic that is on fostering national unity and healing in Malawi after the contested elections. So the next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so I will start by looking at the background and also the context of the topic which I was looking at, which is the fostering national unity and healing in Malawi after the contested elections. So a little bit of a background. In 2019 and 2020 here in Malawi, we usually vote after 5 years. So we voted in 2014 and then the next election was in 2019. But in 2019, after we voted, the election was nulled because there were many irregularities. So in Malawi, we also have the political as also regional polarization. So in most here in Malawi, we have many political parties, but mainly we have two main parties. So the main parties are in Malawi, we have three regions. So the northern region, the central, as well as the southern region. And the two main political parties are in the central as well as the southern region. So that's where we have many people. In total, we're about 21 million. So almost maybe 17 million of the population is on central and southern region. So the two political parties, the other one is from the central region and the other one is on the southern region. That's why I'm talking about the regional polarization, which revealed a deep society divisions. So the one which won in 2019 was the one from the southern region, which is the DPP. And the one in the central region is the one which challenged the DPP that there were many irregularities. Some of the irregularities which were identified was the use of the TPEX. So the TPEX is a fluid which is used to erase some of the writings. And we also have some of the key challenges. So in terms of the challenges, we have the regional as well as the ethnic divides. So that's what I was talking about earlier. I want to say here in Malawi, we have three regions, but the southern as well as the central region, that's where we have many people. And if maybe you have, in this case, the party which is from the central region wins, that means the people from the central regions are the ones who benefit a lot from the government. So from that, we thought it wise that there is need of an action to address some of the structural issues through the unity-focused policies. So the next slide. So those are just some of the policy focus areas. So we have the electoral transparency, civic education, national dialogue, grassroots reconciliation, and also proportional representation. So on the policy focus area, the first part on the electoral, yes, you can go to the next slide, but maybe on the electoral transparency, I was simply looking at here in Malawi, we have Malawi Electoral Commission, which is the institutional body which looks at the elections in general. And my key findings, so in terms of the key research findings, the main ones, so there are just three. So the first one is the findings from the stakeholder consultations. So in terms of the findings from the stakeholder consultation, we had the widespread mistrust in electoral systems and also institutions, and also the need for transparent electoral monitoring and community dialogue. as I said, that after the elections were narrowed, so because of the irregularities. So one of the irregularities was they faulted mainly the Malawi Electoral Commission for their processes, the way they handled the votes. So that's why we're talking of the widespread mistrust in the electoral system and also the institution. So many people now have lost trust in the Malawi Electoral Commission. And even now, we're preparing to vote next year, but they have already started challenging the Malawi Electoral Commissions that maybe they are registering children under the age of 18. So that is just one of the problems that we also have. And also the lessons which we learned from the global context, that is the successful national reconciliation efforts, which rely on multiple stakeholder engagement. And the last one is the data insights, where we're looking at the some of the marginalized groups were felt to be excluded. So one of the marginalized groups which failed to be excluded were the elderly. And also the last one is the community level conflicts. So in terms of the community level conflicts, so that one increased just because of the lack of civic education. We can go to the next slide. And also some of the lessons which I have learned during the policy development. So the first one is I'm looking at the collaborative approaches work-based. So in that one, I'm simply looking at during the electoral process, we also need to collaborate with some of the civil society organizations. We need to collaborate with the policymakers, and also we need some of the communities to provide a diverse insight. So we do not need to only rely on the Malawi Electoral Commission, but we also need to involve other stakeholders. And then importance of evidence-based policies. So on that one, I'm looking at the research consultations, and which are grounded on policy recommendations in this case. So we need to conduct research, and then we need to do some consultation from the communities. And then the last one is adaptability is crucial. So on that one, I'm looking at we need to address some of the challenges which require flexibility to accommodate some of the new ideas that we might have. The next slide. And then on the impact on my career and future endeavors, so the first one is I'm looking at the professional growth. So that one, I'm looking at the skills which have benefited from the maybe the lessons which we had, and also during when I was developing the policy. So in terms of the research skills, so I've managed to enhance some of my research skills in terms of the policy analysis, and also how to engage some of the stakeholders. And then the second one, the second impact is on the broader perspective. So there I'm simply looking at, I've managed to gain a deep understanding of the electoral systems, and also governance frameworks. The last one is I'm looking at the future aspirations. So in that one, in future aspirations, simply referring to maybe in the future, I'm thinking of committing myself in advocating for evidence-based policy solutions. Yes, you can go to the next slide. And then those are just some of the key policy recommendations. So we have institutional reforms, civic education, national dialogue platforms, and also technological integration. Maybe on the technological integration, so that one we're simply looking at maybe you need to track some of the results, and also for transparency sake. And institutional reforms, so as I said, that we have the Malawi Electoral Commission, so we need to enhance the Malawi Electoral Commission's operations with the real-time monitoring. We can go to the next slide. So on that one, I'm simply looking at the implementation strategies. So how should we implement the policy? So I'm looking at the national dialogue. So where we need to engage some of the political leaders, civil society, and also faith-based organizations. And also independent electoral commission. So in Independent Electoral Commission here in Malawi, the Malawi Electoral Commission, the chief for the Malawi Electoral Commission is appointed by the president. So normally people lose trust because they say that the president maybe can appoint a friend and so on and so on. So we need an independent electoral commission. So this will ensure transparency in electoral processes. And also we need to grassroots initiatives. So this we need to simply train some of the community facilitators. And then on the summary, so the conclusion is we need reforms through electoral transparency, civic education, and also grassroots dialogue, which are key to unity. So that one will bring an impact whereby it will address some of the society grievances and also foster some of the trust among the citizens and institutions. So the last part is simply the call for an action where you need to collaborate. There is need of collaboration among the policy makers and communities. Thank you so much for sparing your time to listen to my presentation. That's all what I had.
Thank you very much, Mike. So now I will go directly to the next and final presentation from Tsepang. Sorry once again for my pronunciation, who is going to present us challenges facing women's inclusion in peace building and security efforts in Lesotho, focusing on the implementation of UNSCR 1325. So whenever you're ready, Tsepang, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Before Tsepang, Elena, we have Sadilame as the last presenter. Sorry for that mix-up.
Okay, sorry for that. So Sadilame, whenever you're ready.
I mean, after Tsepang, we have Sadilame. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, didn't understand that. But yeah, so this is not the final presentation, but in any case, whenever you're ready, Tsepang, please, the floor is yours.
So can you see my presentation?
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, leadership. I am Tsepa Madziza from Lesotho. So my presentation is based on the obstacles to women inclusion in peace building in Lesotho, specifically considering the UNSCR 1325 in Lesotho, which is United Nations on Security Council resolution number 1325. The reason for me to pick up this topic was to examine the challenges facing women in inclusion in peace building and security efforts in Lesotho, focusing on the implementation of the framework. As we all know that this framework was established or adopted in 2000. That means it has about more than 20 years in its existence. However, there are still problems that women are facing in terms of inclusion in peace building and security issues. Some of those key findings, which are the barriers to women participation, include cultural norms, like the traditional gender roles often limit women participation in public life, including peace building initiatives. And then we have the issue of Lesotho has historically been stable in terms of the politics from maybe 1970 till today. We had many coups, we had military rule, we had democratic rule, we had the other kinds of government that we had, and we even today we are still not well established as a country in terms of democratic rules. Then we also don't have inadequate or legal frameworks which can support the participation of women in peace building, and as a result, that makes women be excluded from decision making. So some of the lessons that I have learned through this policy research was we need collaborative or we need to collaborate for us to end up making sure that the resolution is being implemented well. Ever since 2000, in Lesotho, it has never been considered. I think until in 2019, while few civil society organizations met with the UN women to discuss some of the issues that relates to the resolution. However, even though there were various maybe little workshops or meetings, there's still a problem because the work plan which was supposed to be developed, it hasn't been developed, and there's nobody following up on anything that is related to UN or the resolution 1325. Now, for us to understand the situation on the ground, we need to collect data specifically of the women. We don't have much data currently which says women participation in relation to peace issues. Statistically is based on this. So we need a collection of data so that we understand what has been their participation, what is it that they are doing, and how do we make sure that they participate even more so that the framework is well present, well implemented. Now, my recommendation or the recommendation of the policy, the first one is to establish a UN Women department. So in 2019, when civil society organized themselves in groups to discuss the 1325 resolution, the UN Women that came or that funded that program came from South Africa. It was not from Lesotho. So we still have a case where in Lesotho, the United Nations headquarters in Lesotho does not have the UN Women, of which I believe that can help to advance in or enforcing that the resolution has been implemented, and maybe it can also try to find some resources to support the implementation, even make more awareness and sensitization to other government institutions to be aware of the resolution that it exists and how it can be mainstream it within their frameworks. Now, for this framework to work, we also need a national technical working group which can coordinate and support all the civil society that are supposed to be working in advancing the rights of the women in these countries, and that will help a lot because we have a national working team which is dedicated on the implementation of the resolution 1325. Then we will see a progress in the maybe development of the national work plan relating to the implementation of the resolution. Now, we also have a problem of lack of funding for projects which are related to peace. Now, for this one to end up being implemented, we also need a funding mechanism so that the civil society, when they engage with the public and the grassroots, they have some funding that will help them to access those grassroots communities so that they are able to make them aware and educate them about the resolution and the importance of the resolution 1325. Now, one other issue, I think the last one in the recommendation is that as much as there are laws which have been developed, which are supposed to advance the rights of the women, but they are not in considerate of the UN Security Council resolution. So my recommendation would be that every time those laws are being enacted, they should be aware of the resolution and try to mainstream this resolution in all the acts that are being implemented so that the participation of women and their voices are heard. Now, the positive change after the implementation, the first one is the issue of the increased participation of women. If the framework is well implemented, it will mean that the participation of women in peace building processes will increase, hence a positive change will suffice. Now, this is also an issue of enhanced collaboration, which maybe will create a collaboration among stakeholders, which include the government, civil society, and the international partners, and even maybe the grassroots themselves. Because if they don't work together, then that will cause a problem, because they should be all stakeholders should be part of the decision-making process, and that will bring a broader understanding of the participation of women in the peace-building processes, or the framework itself. What is it, the agenda of that framework, and how can it be implemented, and how can it be mainstreamed within the legal frameworks of a country, and what will be the benefit for a country if that framework is being implemented. Now, the other issue is the shifting of the attitudes. If there's enough awareness raising, there's enough education, then the classrooms, specifically the traditional leaders, it means they will understand what is the main agenda of the framework, the resolution 1325, and that will make them to shift from declining women from participating in some of the decision, which include themselves, but yet they are not there. Now, the issues of maybe implementation, engagement, or trying to build on progressing. The first one is to conduct a comprehensive evaluation of women participation in peace, security, processing, and sort, or that will identify barriers and opportunities. My reason for this is because as much as there are some issues or some studies which has been made or which have been made in these countries, but they are not related to the peace and security issues. They are just studies relating to gender issues and other issues related to women. But in here, I want to there should be an evaluation of the current situation in terms of their participation in peace and security processes, and this will help to provide a bigger picture of what exactly is the main problem that they are facing in terms of peace and security issues, and what are the challenges that we need to deal with. Now, as much as we need to do conduct a comprehensive evaluation, we also need a funding to be able to implement some of these activities. We cannot implement these activities without having access to any financial and human resources. So as a result, for us to be able to develop a national action plan, that national action plan should be implemented with the resources, specifically the human resource and financial resources. Therefore, we need the funding to be able to fully implement
Stefan?
Yes.
I do not. Yeah, I'm so sorry once again to cut you off there, but I need to ask you to maybe wrap up in like 1 minute and a half, like 2 minutes, because we have like another speaker and then we have to close up the session. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry.
Okay, no, okay, it's fine. So then for us to be able to see or monitor the whole situation, with the African Union has established some kind of frameworks that can support us in tracking the implementation of the resolution 1325, and we can use the scorecards and indicators to assess the implementation and so forth and on. And the last one is by implementation by implementing this recommendation, Lesotho can create a more and inclusive environment for women in peace building, fostering a sustainable and resilient society for all. So in terms of experience, in my case, I think it has increased in knowledge on research and policy advocacy development, of which I did not have. In fact, I have never even started and completed a policy advocacy research until today. So I think that is a more positive and increased knowledge in my side. So maybe not to go further, I think that will be the end.
Okay, so thank you very much for your presentation. I think that now we can go directly to Sadilame, and whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. And at the end of this, we're gonna have a brief Q&A and space for any kind of intervention there that may raise up. So thank you once again, Tsepang, and Sadilame, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good evening. The pressure of being the final speaker after a very hectic day, but I'll do my best. First, I'd like to highlight that I really enjoyed working on this policy paper because it is a continuation of the work that I've been doing since 2022. That is civic education and advocacy regarding having an inclusive constitutional review process in Botswana. My topic is enhancing democratic integrity and national unity in Botswana. May you please skip to slide 5, which highlights the study objectives. The study objectives, this policy paper helped me identify and analyze practices that exclude certain groups from the constitutional review process. The policy paper also evaluated the impact of these practices on national unity and cohesion among different groups in Botswana. I'll skip to the key findings. The key findings that I found were that the exclusionary practices were the main ones, because we had the first constitutional review process in 2022, which saw limited participation from citizens, raising questions about the exclusivity of the process, marginalization of women and youth. Women and youth were significantly underrepresented in the past constitutional review process, and even the rural population exclusion, which was another concern. One of the key findings also was that an exclusive constitutional review process has on democratic impact. There is an erosion of trust in institutions. The exclusion of various groups has eroded trust in governance institutions, undermining democratic legitimacy. I will skip to the other parts. Oh yeah, recommendations for inclusive review, public participation mechanisms. It's important to have targeted outreach to rural and marginalized groups. It's necessary to ensure that participation in the review and process, and it's also important to have independent oversight. Impact on my career and my future endeavors. Please skip to slide 23. I feel developing this policy paper was great because it enhanced my expertise in governance. The research has enhanced my expertise in governance and policy analysis, providing valuable insights in democratic reforms and improved stakeholder engagement. The research has improved my stakeholder engagement skills, making it easier to collaborate with various groups in future endeavors. As I mentioned before, it's a space that I've been working in already, and working on this policy paper with my amazing supervisor, Mr. Cedric, who gave solid advice. I've been able to make headway in regard to meaningfully participating in regard to the constitutional review process, the impending. And it's a good thing because our new government has actually committed to having an inclusive and comprehensive constitutional review process. And the summary of findings of the importance of inclusivity. The policy paper highlights the critical importance of inclusivity in the constitutional review process to strengthen democracy and national unity, which are key elements of peace. And yeah, I'm done. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. You will be proud that one day when we eventually have the inclusive and comprehensive constitutional review process, in some way you will have made a contribution as part of the Conflict Lab Fellowship. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Sadilame, also for being so concise and for cutting so much out of the presentation. Thank you very much indeed. Unfortunately, yeah, we're a little bit long with the time. You know, like our discussions could really go on forever, but now I wanted to give the floor to Noah for any sort of like interventions. I received, let's say, this suggestion from the coordinating team. So please, whenever you're ready, Noah, if we want to share with us some insights, we are more than pleased to listen to you.
Okay, thank you. Let me try to share my PowerPoint if it works for me. Does it work?
So unfortunately, I'm not personally able to see your screen. I don't, yeah, now I see it. Now I see it.
Okay, great. My name is Noah, and I work at the Ethiopian Human Rights Defender Center as a protection and research manager. Are you hearing me?
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
we
you
can
very
hear you
much.
now.
Hello?
We can
Okay,
hear you, Noah. I don't know if you
great.
can hear us.
Yes, yes, so I'm gonna present about our research, and there is to begin with the concept, there is saying that research not communicated is not done, and so doing research is not the end of our story, or it should be, research should be communicated work, so that for a research to have meaning and influence, it needs to be communicated effectively, and it's important to communicate our research in any field, so that effectively communicating our research will have a greater impact for our work, and it's important to do that. So how can we communicate? When we say how can we communicate our research, there are many different ways to communicate our research or your research. As we see from the presentations, the excellent brief presentations, they're communicating their research. So it's important to recognize to whom we are communicating our research, and we have to identify, or it's essential to identify our different audiences when we communicate our research. So in this regard, there are many different forms of research communication, but the main forms of research communication are academic and non-academic research communication. When I say research communication, that means presentation or dissemination. So when we see the academic research communication, academic dissemination is to showcase our research to other familiar. So it's only concerned about those stakeholders in the field. It may be in the legal discipline or in the medicine or in health disciplines. So its main aim may be to develop ideas or contribute to the existing debate and to the existing the knowledge that exists in the present. So academic dissemination of research primarily consists of journal articles, books, conference presentations, academic lectures, and workshops or seminars. So these are the ways that we communicate our the non-academic sphere that we have seen here from the young researchers. When we communicating our research to non-academic audience may need different techniques and skills because there are diverse stakeholders in the non-academic sector. As you see here, it's from the health, it's from the women's perspective, and it's from the democracy, peace and security perspective. So non-academic dissemination may include policy briefs targeting policy actors because these policy actors may not have that much time to look our bulky research or to look extended papers. So they need policy briefs, 6 or 10 pages of policy briefs. So we have to target them or we have to present our findings through policy briefs for policy actors or decision makers. And the other form of communication in the non-academic is reports and press releases. And the other one is submission of evidence. For example, to the parliamentary committees, we may present our researches showing the evidences. It may be through infographics or other ways. And the other one is blogs or workshops and round table discussions. These are crucial research communication ways, workshops and round table discussions. By identifying the key stakeholders, we can present our research in these ways. The other one is social media posts or podcasts or interviews. Especially the social media posts may reach to beyond our target, and they may bring new ideas or new critiques regarding our research. And the podcasts, if you have seen in YouTube or other platforms, there are podcasts that present a well-studied longitudinal research, so that these are the ways that we communicate our research in the non-academic sphere. When we see how to maximize the impact of our research, so for a research to have impact, there are a number of ways or communications to consider. We have to consider our research, how to communicate our research. So we have to bear in mind to ask ourselves these key questions and know our audience. The first one is, who is my intended audience for my research? And the second one is, what is my message? Is it about a conflict-related sexual violence? Is it about women's rights? Is it about accountability? We have to crave our messages wisely. And the third one is what outcome do I want to achieve? Is it a policy change or legal change, or is it a practical change? We have to Hello? Are you hearing me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Yes,
Yeah, we
we're
can hear
hearing
you.
you. Unfortunately,
you.
Noah, I have to be kind of the not so funny person again because I have to ask you to kind of wrap up in a couple of minutes max because we are already kind of a little bit going over time. So that would be really appreciated. I'm so sorry for that. Thank you.
Okay, just 1 minute. So we have to ask these questions for our research to have an impact in a certain area, and the impact of our research may be the main thing is we must not undersell our research findings, and they may bring a change in behavior, policy, or practice, and they may bring knowledge enhancement in the area. As you see from the presentations, they are diverse and they bring a lot of knowledge for the area they presented, and they may bring future collaborations. If we are talking on sexual gender-based violence, when we present our research on that area, it may bring various collaborations among stakeholders when we call them brief issues. So we must not undersell our research findings, and we have to target what impact am I going to expect from this research launching or this research communication. This is what I have regarding the how can we communicate our research. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noah, once again. And thank you to all our speakers today in general, our keynote speaker, Tammy Palacios, but also our fellows speakers. So now I will just pass on the floor to Godwill for the closing remarks. On my side, thank you very much for taking the time. Sorry for going a little bit overboard with the time. I think that we have so much interesting knowledge that we are kind of exchanging here that sometimes you get caught up in the various kind of pathways it kind of carries you to. So thank you very much. Sorry for the time, and I'll leave you now to Godwill.
Thank you very much, Elena, for a good job as usual. We want to start by apologizing because we went beyond the scheduled time. We're expected to wrap this off by 7 p.m. But here we are 18 minutes into time. But I think you all can bear with me that it was kind of interesting. If it were possible, we could go on and on, but unfortunately we are unable to do so. Before I go, I want to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Omeje Richard. Thank you very much, Richard, for showing up. For those of us who don't know Richard, Mr. Richard, he's a gender advocate. He was a speaker during our webinar commemorating the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And this year, we had a unique approach to the conversation where we had men leading the talks. And fortunately, Mr. Richard was one of those speakers, and he shared so much key insight as far as work on gender-based advocacy is concerned from a male perspective, and how we can actually promote positive masculinity and all that. Thank you very much, Mr. Richard, for joining us. And not forgetting Lidi Mungala. Unfortunately, I would have had you kind of share some insight into the conversation of today. I had that in mind, but time as it is will not permit. But just know that we are very grateful to have you join us here today, and we definitely know that your time was not wasted at all. And to the fellows, it's been a very interesting journey. 2 months plus down the drain. I want to say that it's been more of a shared learning experience than a teaching experience. We've learned so much from your unique experiences in your different parts of Africa, and equally how you bring those perspectives into our weekly conversations were very interesting. I want to actually call out Sabina for your insightful stories during our sessions. We are very grateful, and no one is left out from Lashen, from Mike. Thank you all. And why not? I want to equally give gratitude to our mentors who are here with us. Very first on my screen, Hemich Nzunga. Hemish Nzunga he serves as a research assistant with us at the Conflict Lab, and he's based in Zimbabwe. He was very instrumental in the design and conceptualization of this project. He was a core member of the fellowship team. Thank you very much, Hemish, for the work. I know you're very proud now to see what we've realized with the little seed we nested some months back. Unfortunately, Larissa, who is the coordinator of the fellowship team, is not here with us today because she's actually on transit. But she will be happy how this has gone. And equally, Prince, I don't know if Prince is here. Prince, thank you very much for your contribution. Prince is a research assistant with us at the Conflict Lab. And equally, Cedric. Cedric he leads our research efforts at the Conflict Lab. He's the research coordinator. Thank you very much, Cedric, for being so instrumental to this. Romaric, who is a research assistant and who was equally a mentor. Thank you very much. Equally, Elena, who was a mentor, and equally today our moderator. Having young people lead the space of producing knowledge, evidence, and leading actions on ground as far as making Africa a better place is concerned. And to our speakers, to Tammy, we are happy to have you, and we hope that this ignites some groundwork for collaboration between us and you in the amazing work you do. And we look forward to having you impacting us more with your experience inside. And the Conflict Lab is actually a baby initiative. We believe to rest on the shoulder of giants, and hopefully we're doing that already. And the future definitely is promising. I think if I just have to go on, it would just be to express gratitude that we have this success, and we're very proud that the impact is made. Thank you all for coming out. And for our fellows, your certificate will be emailed to you. And equally, all your submissions will undergo an internal review and will be published on our website by January. So please be on standby. We are not done yet with the process of these papers. We have to refine them. So after the review and publication, there we can be proud to have nurtured a baby to maturity. So that's all for me, Elena. Thank you all for coming out. We are happy you did.
Yes, so I think that now we can finally wrap up, but I would like to also thank you, Godwill, for all your work and your passion and motivation. The Conflict Lab really would not be the same without you. I can speak to this personally because of the opportunity that you and all, of course, people at the Conflict Lab were kind enough to give me kind of some months ago when I started collaborating with you all. And so since everybody was shown gratitude, it's only fair that we show gratitude to you too. So thank you very much. Thank you to everybody for joining us tonight, to our speakers and guests. And I wish you a wonderful continuation of your evening. And thank you once again for all your work and participation.
Thank you. Congratulations, fellows.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, Sadileme. Thank you too.